Listen! Hello and welcome to NVC, IGN's Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Casey DeFreitas, and this week we will be talking about Paper Mario, the Origami King, the best games to play in the summer, and a whole lot more Nintendo stuff. This week I am joined by Zach Ryan,
Hey, everybody.
Tom Marks,
Hello.
and Seth Macy.
Hello.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? How was your 4th of July?
It was good. I didn't eat any hot dogs, which was disappointing, but
I didn't
Yeah.
either. I did.
heard a lot of fireworks.
I
yeah,
did
me too.
I also heard fireworks at 3 o'clock in the morning last night. I was super happy about that.
I'm feeling extra festive.
Extra festive, but my goal on 4th of July was to get a sunburn, and I am sad to report I did not get one. Despite my best efforts. But anyway,
You know how much priorities have shifted when that's the goal.
it's like it's not 4th of July unless you accidentally spend too much time in the sun and get sunburnt. But because there were no festivities, I didn't have a lot of reason to stay outside of the sun, so I got bored and went inside before I reached my goal. I hope everyone else's 4th of July was more exciting than mine.
It was
But-
good. Yeah.
Good. And speaking of the summer, 4th of July kind of like kicks off summer for me. It's hot in some places, kind of not here. It's 70 hot. I don't know. It's up to you. But let's talk about the best games on the Switch that remind you of summer. I'm looking for games with summer vibes. And then we can also talk about some games that remind you of one of your past stereotypical summers. Guys, what are your favorite games that give off summer vibes? I think Tom is frozen.
No, I'm not
he's back.
frozen. I'm frozen in thought.
He's just
Frozen in thought.
he's
I mean,
Very
talking
unsummer like Tom.
The one that sprang to mind immediately that you've already got on this on a little list you put together is Super Mario Sunshine, right? Like that game is just like, I mean, it's in the summer vibes of the sun are in the name essentially, but also just like, man, the way they crafted Isle Delfino and like Delfino Plaza and all of the really lovely little beachy environments in that game is there's not much better that captures that feeling in a game, especially in that area, like the little like market area, which has like all the fruit stalls and like I just love the vibe of that game so much.
That was the first game that popped into my mind when I was thinking about it. I was like, what game reminds me of summer? And it was definitely Super Mario Sunshine. I don't know. Seth, what do you think?
Oh, obviously it's Wave Race 64. You're out there on the bay.
Okay.
You're jumping your jet ski over waves and ramps and things of that nature. It's a cool and refreshing way to spend a hot summer's day out on the water. Who could complain? Nobody.
Yeah.
That's who.
I miss beach visits, I gotta say. What about you, Zach?
I mean, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker at this juncture. Possibly the most summertimey game. You can play out on the open sea, get out there and do a nice sail. Love that game.
Trying to think of some more, and I mean, we have to mention the Animal Crossing New Horizons recent summer update. Have any of you guys been played that?
I have
No.
not dipped back into it yet, sadly.
Yeah,
I've dropped off Animal Crossing very hard.
me.
But I was very happy to see it. Very
Yeah.
happy to see it.
And we had actually on the wiki steam, we had actually just deleted some of our like swimming and diving pages, like, oh, like this isn't included, and then it immediately came back with this update.
Aw.
But it's fine, like you can just undo it, so it's okay. But
That's good.
For those of you who don't know, there's a new summer update in Animal Crossing that lets you swim and collect stuff like sea stars and seashells and scallops and all of that, the good kind of summer stuff that you do. I don't know, like scallop, I don't know what to call it. Hunting? Scallop hunting? You would call it
Gathering.
fishing. Scallops gathering.
Shucking,
gathering.
I think.
Chucking? Well, you
Shucking.
shuck.
Well, you
You
can either
shuck them
dive
after
for
you
them or
catch
you can
them.
drag for them. So there's two
Okay.
different ways to do
Diving.
it in real life.
Diving for scallops in real life is extremely fun, and I highly recommend it. Shucking them is very difficult. I don't recommend that. But you can kind of do that in Animal Crossing now, and it has some. What are you making those looks for, Zach?
This is a weird show.
I'm sorry. Guys, we got to talk about scallop shucking. It's,
I got all excited. We're like, oh, we're talking about commercial fishing. This is where I get to shine.
yeah, and I'm thinking of all the weird summer stuff I do in Florida that involves the beach and sea creatures.
Fair enough.
Come on. Animal Crossing is a great place to do that. You can hang out with your friends and go and pick up sea stars off the explore the ocean without actually disrupting animals' lives. It's a great I don't know, replacement for summer stuff.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to mention Summer in Mara because it has summer in the title and it also just came out.
What
It's
is
on
that game?
Island.
I don't know what that game is. Summer and Mara.
So how do I actually haven't played it, so I can't give you a good personal rundown. From what it seems, you play
Mhm.
um, on an island and it's an adventure game, relaxing indie. It looks cute.
Yeah,
There's
it's
beaches.
got the same sort of vibes as like
Mhm.
Stardew Valley, Harvest Moony sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Not specifically the same type of gameplay, but that sort of feeling.
Okay, cool. That sounds good.
So those are, I guess, the only games you can really think of that give good
Well,
summer
so
vibes.
so here's the question I have:
Yeah.
Is Mario and Sonic Summer Olympics too
Oh,
on the
there we
nose?
go. No, it has summer in the title.
Is that like too direct? I don't know.
Somebody's got to hold the Olympics, Tom. I mean, in 2020, if Tokyo can't do it, Mario and Sonic are going to step in and do
Yeah.
it for you.
There you go.
Makes
We
sense.
got it. We got the game. I was also thinking of some non-Nintendo games that have summer vibes, but
Mhm.
some of you guys might scoff at me to mention this, but Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball, great summer game. You just hanging
I
out.
always forget that that's like one of your go-tos, Casey.
I really like that game. I mean, you're just hanging with your gal pals, doing beach volleyball and pool games and stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'd want to go on that vacation. Who wouldn't? But that's just me. It's fine. I have whatever. All right.
No, this is a judgment-free zone. No one here is judging you.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of collectibles.
I'm
You're
judging a
guide-
little bit.
I know
You're a
Zach's
guide
judging me a
writer.
little
It's got
bit.
tons of collectibles. It makes sense. It tracks.
You can also ride a jet ski. I mean,
See,
I
now I
know.
didn't know this.
yeah, you ride jet ski. Dead or Alive Beach
Okay.
Volleyball
Also,
Extreme 2.
let's not forget about the butts.
Yeah, there's also butts in that game. And there's secrets that I won't mention on this show, but I'm sure you can easily look it up, and it regards on what age you set your character to in the
Secret
options.
butts
Secret stuff. But
for all you naughty
hope-
volleyball fans out there.
I did have another question for you guys. So those are
Now
games
who's
that kind
making
of
a
have-
face, Tom?
Yeah. So those are games that give off some summer vibes that I wanted to ask the panel, what game reminds you of your most stereotypical summer? Like when you think of summer, like what game comes to your mind? Seth, I know
Well,
that you had an answer.
Let's take it back to the summer of 1999. A young airman first class, Seth Macy, had just returned from a 4-month deployment to Tirana, Albania. He had a lot of money in his bank account because he had been prohibited from spending his money due to the fact that he was living on a camp in Tirana, Albania. So the first thing he did was he bought a JVC 27-inch CRT television set, a Nintendo 64, and a copy of Ocarina of Time. And I had 2 weeks off, and I sat in my dorm room and I played Ocarina of Time basically the entire time because everyone else still had to go to work. I will always associate that game with summer because of just like that was in July of 98. And I will also, at the same time, they had a 4th of July festival on base called the Freedom Fest, which was set up with carnival rides. And this was just as Lou Bega was breaking into the music scene with a little ditty called Mambo Number 5, which they played on the merry-go-round over and over. So I also think of Ocarina of Time and Mambo Number 5 basically as the same thing because I could hear Mambo Number 5 going on constantly while I was playing through Ocarina of Time.
That's a weird association. Mambo Number
That
5
is
with Ocarina of
very
If
Time.
you hear it 700 times in the course of 2 weeks while you're playing Ocarina of Time, you will always get a little bit of Monica in
Oh
your
gosh.
No,
water temple.
please.
Yeah. Why do you hate Lou Bega? The guy brought
It's a good
all of
song.
Europe together.
It's not that I hate Lou Bega. It's just that is one of those songs that as soon as it gets in your head, it's there to stay. Like there's just no getting around
It
it.
is.
Mm.
Yeah.
I apologize
it's
to
there.
everyone who's now cursed with this affliction.
Boy, yeah, okay. I'm with Zach now. It's stuck in my head. You're totally right.
Yeah, I know. I don't make
It's a
the
good
rules.
song. Come on.
It's still a good
It's a
song.
catchy little song. It took the world by storm.
All right, Tom. what game reminds you of your most
Mambo Number
stereotypical
5.
summer?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Well, that story is great. Like that is genuinely a wonderful story. For
Thank you.
me, probably the easiest answer is Smash Bros. Right? Like
Okay.
that was the game me and my friends just like would play constantly, right? And like the thing we do a lot when I was younger too, for like whenever we had the time or the people available, which was usually summer, was like we would have in one room everyone playing or four people at a time playing Smash Bros. But we'd have like five or six people over or like hanging out or whatever. So in the other room on the computer, we'd have Heroes of Might and Magic, usually two or three, right? Like one of the early Heroes of Might and Magic games on hot seat, which means that you couldn't be in the room while someone else was taking their turn because everyone was playing against each other and just sharing a computer. So we'd have the hot seat going, and if we had five people, we'd have four people playing Smash Bros, and then whoever's turn it was in Might and Magic would be in the other room taking their turn, and then they'd come out and just swap controllers with whoever's next turn it was. They'd go into the next room, play Heroes, and like we'd keep playing Smash Bros in that room.
This
So
is
that
like a
was like
super fun summer.
no, it's great, and we did that a fair amount. So Smash Bros is always a good vibe to me, but also just like the other sort of later in my life place that summer gaming takes me is like League of Legends, which is not on Switch, but any sort of game that is like one of those things that just requires investment, right?
Yeah.
Like MOBAs or something like Warframe or like any which is on Switch, any of those sorts of games that just take brain power and take you learning like a Rolodex full of abilities and items and strategies. I always think those games remind me of just like this is going to sound depressing, but I don't mean it that way. But like having the time to actually
Yeah.
invest in them, you know what I mean?
I
It's like, man, I do
completely
not
get
have
it.
time for a mover right now.
Zach, what about you?
The first game that comes to mind is Banjo Kazooie.
Hmm.
I don't know specifically why that is the game that popped into my head, but I do feel like I played that game a lot one specific summer. So yeah, I would say that's probably at the top of my list for summertime games.
Cool. For
Uh,
me, my real answer is Monster Hunter, but that was non Nintendo at the time. So my other answer is Mario Party 2 because when I must have been 10 and my neighbor was 12, and every day I would carry over my Nintendo 64 to her house and we would play Mario Party 2 every day for like 2 months. And I got very, very good at Mario Party. And to this very day, I'm still quite good at mini games. I think I'd say so myself. It was a
was
very fun
two
summer.
was two the one that destroyed people's joysticks, or was that one?
I believe that was the
All of
first
them?
one.
No.
Okay. Well,
I
yeah,
think I
that
think it was the very first one where they sent out those weird gloves.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah. Okay,
goodness.
okay, okay.
yeah,
Gosh. So we just talked about some games that give us summer vibes and games that make us nostalgic for summer. Now let's move on to our next topic, Paper Mario: The Origami King. Zach has played a ton of it, and if
Mhm.
you're watching this on Thursday, his preview, our final preview on IGN, just released for it. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, that sure is a Paper Mario game. Um, I think that.
Finally.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I like I like what I've played. I've played about 9 hours. I'd say I'm probably about one third of the way through the game if I had to guess. So I like what I've played. Uh, but I like Paper Mario games, right? Like I don't necessarily feel like this one breaks the mold. And I say this in my review, but I think the interesting thing or the thing to consider about this game compared to some of Nintendo's other offerings on the Switch is like, I feel like Nintendo has done a really good job of either redefining or sort of offering up the best version of an established franchise, right? Like Luigi's Mansion 3 doesn't stray too far from the two previous Luigi's Mansions before it,
Mhm.
but it is a much better paced and a much better like actioned game, right? Breath of the Wild, obviously a completely new take on Zelda. Super Mario Odyssey, like probably the best 3D Mario that we've had ever, right? This game is good, but it is a Paper Mario game through and through. and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I think that to a lot of people that's a really good thing. It's fun. It's very like my first RPG when it comes to the RPG mechanics of the game. You're doing things like equipping accessories and looking for hearts for additional HP increases and things like that. But I think, as is the case with any Paper Mario game, where it really shines is the humor and the writing. It's so funny right out of the bat. Like, I mean, I was like chuckling at it constantly, but there's a couple of parts. There's specifically one joke with a toad that made me laugh so hard that I had to like set the controller down. Like it's a very, very funny and very well localized game for sure. And it's also like gorgeous to look at. Some of the areas that you go to, there's a Shogun Studios is like a Japanese themed television studio space where there's all these like different areas to interact with, and like it's very it looks like a Japanese temple and a little town outside of it that's very cool. There's Autumn Hills, which is also like similarly themed, but has like all these like red and gold and orange leaves everywhere and stuff, and it's just like there are some places that playing through the game, some locations where you stop and you're like, wow, this is a really great looking game, in the same way that like Yoshi's Crafted World is like really interesting to look at because it's all very handcrafted and very unique in the way that like you can see the seams in the paper where it's been folded, or the cardboard that makes up the coins and stuff like that. Like it's very, very clever and very cute.
Yeah, Nintendo does a really good job with their first parties of like, and this is gonna sound harsh, but like hiding the shortcomings of what the Switch can do graphically, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you just went out to try to make a beautiful looking AAA high end graphics game, like let's say porting The Witcher to Switch, like you're obviously going to see what the Switch can't do in a game
Mhm.
like that. But in, like you said, in Crafted World, in Odyssey, in Breath of the Wild, apparently in Origami King, right? That is something that Nintendo is so good at, is coming up with a style that doesn't make you even notice those rough edges because
Right.
you're looking at other things, right?
Yeah.
You're impressed by other things.
Yeah, like they're never going to do something photorealistic, but this
Right.
is equally visually appealing in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And it's really clever in that, like in the same way that Luigi's Mansion is, that there's tons of hidden interactivity all over the place. Like there are so many different things that you can look at, or take a closer inspection of, or hit with your hammer and they'll react, or something like that. And it's really fun. Like all of the characters are made of paper, whether they're folded into origami or whether they're the like traditional 2D paper characters from Paper Mario. And like you can whack any of them with your hammer and they all will give you a different response and result. And like, it's oftentimes they'll comment on it. It's really funny. There's like stuff hidden everywhere, including toads. Toads come and help you in battle. Like you can summon toads and they'll give you health, and they'll attack the enemies and like change the layouts of the environments and stuff during the battles itself. But like the way to increase that stat essentially for those battles is to find toads hidden throughout the world. And there's toads hidden everywhere. Like there's just toads all over the damn place. It's wild. Like you find them hidden in all kinds of things, folded up into different objects. Like, so it encourages you to go around and just be like hammering on everything to try and see where toads are going to pop out, which I really loved. The battle system is really unique. I'm sorry. You have to talk amongst yourself for 1 second while I plug in my computer. I didn't realize it was going to die.
Okay. I did, when he comes back, I did want to ask, like, is it a Korok seed situation with the toads?
Right.
So we'll get that answer when he comes back.
Well, it's funny too, because that's also a thing they did in the Pokemon DLC recently, right?
Mhm.
They did yeah, with the Diglets thing, the Alolan Diglets that you can find all around. So maybe Nintendo is doing more of that. They're doing these like hide little dudes everywhere because it works so well in Breath of the Wild.
But did it though? I mean, did you actually enjoy finding over 900 Korok seeds?
No,
I found a Korok seed situation.
I found like 180 of them, and I was totally pleased and had absolutely no desire to go find.
That's a really interesting comparison, because like I feel the same way about the toads as I did feel about the Koroks in Breath of the Wild, in that, like, if I find one by happenstance, like if I just happen to find one, great. But if I miss one or two, like, it's not that big a deal. I got an item later in the game, uh, in Paper Mario, that, like, it's a little bell that will ding when you're close to a toad, and
Okay.
that bell is like constantly going off, and I'm just like, well, if it's not just readily apparent where he is, I'm not going to go look for them. Like, it's fine. I already have enough of these guys. I
Can you
should
turn
talk
the
about.
bell off?
Yeah, it's an accessory, so you can equip
Cool.
it or yeah, take it off. Like, yeah. But the battle system is really interesting this time around. It's like a really neat mix of, like, a quick puzzle solving and actual, like, Paper Mario battles. So, like, all the battles take place on this giant circle, this segmented circle. And so your first task in any battle, like, your enemies come in and they scatter all over the circle, and it's your job to rotate each concentric circle or move them vertically across the circle, to line them up, right? Like, either in groups of 4 or in straight lines. And if they're in straight lines, then you can jump across them. And if they're in groups of 4, you can use your hammer and attack them. And so sometimes you'll have, like, you know 12 enemies on screen, and you'll have to figure out in 2 or 3 moves how to get them all clustered together in a specific way. So it's really tricky, especially the later you get into the game. They'll scatter those enemies, and sometimes the solution is really readily apparent. Like, it's like, oh, it's just these 2 moves, no big deal. And then sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not entirely sure, and I'll have to attack separate groups at different times. Um, so that's really interesting. But then the best part about the game, hands down, is the boss battles. The boss battles are a little different. They're kind of backwards to how the regular battles play out, in that all the regular battles, Mario's in the middle and all the enemies are around him, and you have to line them up on the outside. But for boss battles, the bosses are in the middle and Mario starts on the outside, and it's your job to rotate the circles to create a path for Mario to get to the boss in the middle and then attack. And so, like, the first boss is really clever. It's this giant turtle boss. And so you have to move Mario in a way, lay out these arrows on the play field, kind of like in Choo Choo Rocket. Like, you have to lay out these areas to guide Mario to the turtle's hind legs or the turtle's tail or the turtle's head, and do specific attacks at these different points. And it makes those boss battles, like, really frantic and really fun. I kind of came away from it wishing that more of the battles were like the boss battles and less of the, like,
Mhm.
regular battles, because the boss battles are just so much more engaging and require so much more planning and thought. Um, but the battle system is neat. I liked that a lot. The music is killer. God, the music absolutely slaps. Especially, like, there's 2 types of battles. Regular battles, there's just like a standard battle and then a wave battle where you'll fight multiple waves of enemies. And the wave battle theme is like this insane, like, Japanese metal riff with, like, all these, like,
Cool.
funny little Mario voices going off, and, like, it's really, really, and it happens at the very beginning of the game. It's very cool. Um, but yeah, I like it. I think it's good. I'm excited to play more of it. Uh, I think that the like I said, the characters and the writing are really funny. And if you're a Paper Mario fan, I feel like this is going to be right up your alley. But if you're looking for a kind of a reimagining of that genre, or like a return to, like, the Thousand Year Door era Paper Mario, I think you might be left a little wanting. But cool game. I'm having a good time with it.
Awesome. Zach, thank
Yeah.
you so much for that awesome summary and preview of Paper Mario the Origami King. That game comes out on July 17th for the Nintendo Switch, and I'm sure we will be talking about it a lot more once everyone else has played it.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on to some more news. Seth, you brought up
Yes.
this game to me. I was
Yes.
unaware. There's this game called Panzer Paladin coming out on
Yes.
the Nintendo Switch on July 21st, and it's made by Tribute Studios.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more.
Well, it looks awesome. I played this game at PAX East 2018, and it was very early. And even then, I said, wow, this game is extremely my jam. It's pixel art, it's like NES style. I think, don't quote me on this, don't put me on the box, but I think this has the potential to be like another Shovel Knight, just
Okay.
because of the charm of it and how many sort of old NES games it sort of smashes together. Like Tom and I were speaking earlier about it. It looks like Mega Man X boss battles meets like Blaster Master meets I can't even remember the name of the game now. It's from Irem. Metal Storm, where it has like gravity switching. There you can like make your own swords in this like pixel art editor, and then you can go swinging around your own custom swords. I'm sure that will not be abused horribly
Seth
by
was
people.
so excited this morning when he sent this new trailer to me for Panzer Paladin, and like it looks really cool. The thing that struck me that I said to you also was like it looks kind of like somebody took those sequences in Mega Man X where you can steal a mech from an enemy and jump in the mech, and like just made a whole game out of that mechanic, but way expanded. Like, so yeah, I'm agree. It looks neat.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's a mech game, but it's also an old school platformer, and it looks gorgeous. Like you should absolutely look at this game, like at the gameplay trailer of it. And from what I played 2.5 years ago in Boston, it was very fun back then. And it was like a surprise that it's even coming out. It was just like today they announced it. Hey, July 21st, you're gonna get this cool game for your Switch. Enjoy
Awesome.
yourselves, folks. Here's a gift from We Tribute Studios to you, the fans of mech action.
Thank you. Thank you for the
No.
heads up on this cool game that we get to look forward to at the
Very
end of the
excited.
month as well.
The
And
fans of mech.
speaking of things to look forward to, July Nintendo Switch Online games have been announced, and one of them is
Woohoo!
Donkey Kong Country. Did I just say Kong? Donkey Kong. There's no con going on with this. This is true.
God.
It's all true. Guys, Donkey Kong Country is. I love that game. I played it all the time
Yeah.
with
Oh, yeah.
Nintendo.
So did I.
I am stoked for this to come to the Nintendo Switch. I remember being so impressed about these graphics when I was a
Oh
little
yeah.
kid, right?
You know
Like,
who hates this game? Shigeru
who?
Miyamoto. 'Cause he
Oh,
said,
really?
yeah, he's like, Americans will just look at some nice graphics, and that's all it takes for those people over there.
But it was
That might
also
be apocryphal, but
good.
he didn't like it from what I
Am I
understand.
wrong thinking that it was good?
No, it's good. I love Donkey
Oh,
Kong Country.
yeah.
I played so much Donkey Kong
Okay.
Country. It started
Okay.
my Donkey Mania.
I also loved that it was yeah. I also loved that it was co-op.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played this game with my cousin, and he was very mean and convinced me that only babies play Diddy Kong, and convinced me to switch and play Donkey Kong instead. And then he started telling me how Diddy Kong was so much better, and he tricked me into getting it, and it was a terrible time. He was very mean,
Messed up.
but it's fine.
That's very messed up.
Basically, he
Yeah.
had me like begging to play the character I didn't have at all times. It was a fun time.
It was a genius move.
Yeah.
This game came out really late in the Super NES cycle. So to do what they did graphically was basically the only way they could compete against like the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn, which nobody really cared about anyway. But I mean, they just took pictures of computer generated graphics and used those to animate it, and it made it look like a CG generated game. It's very
It's
clever.
pretty brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Also,
cool.
it just rules. Like I love Donkey Kong Country. The fact that if you guys haven't played Donkey Kong Country, I'd even go as far as to say it holds up. Like it really, really does. It's a
Yeah.
fun platformer. And there's parts of it that are gonna be off-putting. The graphics rule, but as a result, the like hitbox of like when you're supposed to jump or when you'll fall off an edge is like way
Oh.
less precise than we are used to in modern platformers. So like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to adjust to that, but like if you've never
Yeah.
played it before, but it's so worth it. I
Or-
think that game's great.
Or if I may,
Or
just play Tropical Freeze, which is
I knew
actually
you
the
were gonna
best
say that.
Donkey Kong game.
Tropical Freeze is
One of the
a
best
good game.
platformers on the Switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
That game rules.
Why not both?
And it has new funky mode.
Mm.
Let's not forget about funky mode.
And we
Funky
are
mode
also
is for babies.
say that, Zach. Play games however you want to,
No, I know.
everyone.
Come on.
That's
You
right.
know that's true.
I know. I also wanted to mention that Natsume Championship Wrestling is also coming with this pack, and so is the Immortal for NES. And I also wanted to bring up that there's a special like classified information video by Nintendo, which included a bunch of cheats for Donkey Kong Country. And it's Sam actually pointed out that this is a callback to
Yeah.
Nintendo Power Section, which had cheats.
Yep.
And it's really cool. And they're really helpful, awesome cheats, like starting with 50 lives and having a bonus practice area. We could play with all of the different animals that you can kind of, I don't know, summon
Yeah.
in Donkey
pretty
Kong
interesting.
Country.
That's pretty interesting. Do you think that they did that in lieu of the bonus modes like they did for Zelda and Metroid? You know, like you think that they just
Oh.
like because like Zelda, you could start with
Oh
like a
yeah.
bunch of rupees and the white sword, and like you think that Nintendo put out this funny video as a way to be like, oh, and also you can play Donkey Kong, but here is a leg up.
It's the funky mode that we didn't even know they included.
And it feels more classic because
Secret
it's
funky
codes.
mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Man.
But yeah, look forward to those games on July 15th with your Nintendo Switch Online subscription. And very quickly, I wanted to mention The World Ends With You. The animation is coming. And this is a DS game by Square Enix. You might recognize it. They made a cameo in some of the Kingdom Hearts games. It's coming in 2021. The anime will be a retelling of the original game with some expanded scenes. And I'm super excited about this because the game story is awesome. And I always thought it would make an incredible anime. So super stoked for that.
I have
It's
it
also a really good game.
somewhere here in my collection unopened because I was like, oh, this game is speaking my language. And I bought it and I just never
It's
played. I
so
might have
good.
the Switch version too somewhere.
Yeah. I know it's better on the DS.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, but still
Well,
good on the Switch, but better on the
Jet's
DS.
sitting right over there, or I got my backups behind me, so I'm good.
It's such a funny thing to bring back as an animated show because it's got, like you said, the story is good and the aesthetic is wonderful,
Mhm.
but like it's just like I don't feel like there's a ton of people like it doesn't like it's not a game that like elicits like massive crowd support, I guess is the way I'm trying to say it. Like even though it's well loved, it's just
Mhm.
like it's not one I would think that they'd like try to bank on the name of, I guess is the right way to put
Mm.
it, which is sort of funny to me.
Could
Yeah.
you fill me in on the story? Is it some teens fighting at a mall? Is that what the
What?
Basically, yeah.
okay.
No.
What?
God, how do I explain it without spoiling anything? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to tell you about the story without spoiling it.
But some teens having a fight over
It's
fashion.
You'll
it's set
have
in
to watch and find
You'll have
out.
to watch and find out.
Whoa.
It's set in modern Shibuya, and there are fantasy supernatural shenanigans going on.
Cool. Okay. Well, now
And
I'm
you
gonna have
gotta
to.
complete challenges in order to not die.
All right. I
There,
guess
no spoilers. There you go.
break it out of the cellophane wrapper.
Also, the different fashion you wear affects your
Okay,
stats.
so it is teen a shopping RPG. Okay.
You also got that too, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's really cool. I really enjoy it a lot.
I'm into
Um,
it.
And lastly, I just wanted to bring this up as well. We got some reports that some voice actors had finished recording their lines for Breath of the Wild 2, but there is an update on that. It
Oh,
appears
no.
our initial report about the work on the Spanish voice acting for Breath of the Wild 2 missed some nuance about the language used in the original interview. While some had taken Navarro and Alfonso's words to mean that they have either started or finished their work on the game, they do not confirm that fact during the interview. Indeed, the tone of the interview implies that they may even have been joking about their work on the sequel. As such, the interview can't be taken as guidance on the status of the voiceover work, nor as guidance on how far through the development the game may be.
Hmm.
Translations are tricky in some. So, yeah, unfortunately, Breath of the Wild 2 isn't actually close to being finished, as everyone assumed based on that interview.
I saw a
We don't know.
tweet that said something along the lines of like the guy just finished going.
Yeah, there you go.
Those are
He's done.
called efforts.
They're called what?
I believe they're called efforts when you're recording like those kind of sound effects.
Huh.
When
Really?
you're in the
didn't know
VO
that.
booth, I think they're called recording efforts when you do like a yeah.
That was good. That was really good, actually.
Okay.
Thank
Great
you.
effort.
I've been
Anybody's-
recording some efforts recently, as you can see.
Yeah, well, this funny thing about this is like we're basically just back to where we were, which is like we don't know what Nintendo's doing, right? Like,
It's an
like
evergreen statement. Yeah.
yeah, but like I mean, they could be, you know, again, I think it is still completely realistic to think that maybe, and I do think this is less likely now with COVID and that stuff, but like I think possibly this game is coming out this holiday and we just haven't been told about it yet. I would be willing to bet that's no longer the case. I'm not quite as confident in that as I was just because of the way this year has been, but like it could be that. It could be 2 years away. We literally don't know. We just
Yeah.
got to wait for whatever their what would have been E3 Direct will be.
Yeah, literally no clue, but I hope that E3 Direct comes soon. So we just talked about some news, including the announcement date for Panzer Paladin, some Nintendo Switch Online games announced, including Donkey Kong Country, The World Ends With You animation, and some Breath of the Wild 2 news. But let's move on to some games out this week. including Superliminal out on the 7th for $20. Tom, you said this is a first-person puzzle game that messes with perspective in wild and unique ways. Like,
Yeah.
how?
So we nominated this game for one of our in our list of best puzzle games of 2019. And it's one I totally recommend if you're a fan of anything like Portal or oh god, what is the name of that game? Now I'm totally blanking.
I know exactly what game you're talking about, and I can't remember
Ah,
the name, but that's a great game.
Antichamber. Thank
Yeah,
you, Red. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
with the save.
Antichamber, Talos Principle, any of those first-person puzzle games. It's one like that. But the cool thing about this one is like if you pick up a mug on a table and then like move it so that it looks like perspective-wise it's far away and actually very large, and then let go, the mug will be that large in the room. So like there's all these weird sort of perspective messing ideas in this game and it's just really it's a very unique game. I don't think you'll have played a puzzle game like it if you're into other puzzle games like that.
Cool. And speaking of puzzle games, we got Catherine Full Body out this week, out on the 7th for $50. And it is an expanded version of the original Catherine, which came out for the 360 and PS3. Oh man, when was
Million
that?
years ago.
I think it was like 2011.
Yeah, 2011. Yes, you were correct. 2011. And it is an expanded version of Catherine. I actually previewed this last year and saw some of it at E3. I got some E3 swag that I'm excited about. Let's see if I can fit these up for my headphones. Kind of. There we go. I got some.
Nice.
Those look nice. Good work.
No, I give up. It's not going to work. But it's as Tom describes it. It's basically a Persona-style narrative game, but instead of RPG combat, you are solving block-pulling puzzles to climb a tower. The story is bonkers and unique, and it's kind of, I don't even know if I can say it, but there's dating involved and romance, and I hate the main character Vincent. He is trash, but it is a very good game and a fun story, and the gameplay is awesome.
The fact that
it's also
part of the point, right?
yeah, and it's also very like the story itself is like a very mature story, I think, compared to
Yes.
Persona, which is obviously like more like high fantasy and
Mhm.
you know stuff like that. Like this game is about cheating, basically. Like it's
Mhm.
about a cheater. Like,
It's
yeah.
about cheating and adults growing up and settling down or not.
Mhm.
And
But also, it's about block puzzles.
but also it's about
Oh,
block
yeah.
puzzles. And it does explore a lot of those questions, and it actually has you answering questions about morality throughout the game, and there's kind of a twist. There's plenty of twists, and it kind of, I don't know, it had me when I first played it in college, it had me think a lot about those themes that it represented in the game.
How much did you say this was on Switch?
$50.
Hmm.
It did come out for this version of the game came out in the PS4 and Xbox One, I think earlier this year or last year.
Last year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, last year. You are correct.
Mhm.
And Mitchell Saltzman reviewed it. He gave it an 8.8 and says Catherine is a timeless classic, and Full Body does a great job at adding meaningful new content and plenty of small tweaks that breathe fresh life into it. It's the perfect entry point for those who missed the 2011 original. There we go. There's the
Nice.
year that came out. But yeah, they introduced a whole new Catherine. There were once two Catherines, and now there are three, and it adds some extra story. And they did a few tweaks to kind of address some fan complaints from the first one. I
$50
highly
for a whole new Catherine.
I know, whole new Catherine,
That's a
50
steal.
bucks. But yeah, I do
I'll
highly
be the
recommend
judge
that
of
game.
that.
Also coming out this week is CrossCode out on the 9th for $20. And Tom, what do you have to say about this one?
I have to say about CrossCode is play it. Just like man, this game it's kind of like a Mana series style where it's like sort of
What?
isometric top down action combat game. This is an RPG that is deceptively large. Like it could take you upwards of 80 hours to beat.
Whoa.
Want to do all the side stuff. It can be much shorter than that if you're just like mainlining it. But it's like it's this indie RPG that I think flew under a ton of people's radars when it first came out in I think it was 2018.
Yeah,
the
that's
Switch
right.
Switch port has been like really like anticipated, I guess is the right word, because it wasn't even supposed to ever be able to come to Switch because the way they originally coded the game was like not portable basically. So the developers had to do a ton of work to get it onto Switch. And yeah, CrossCode is just like This is an extraordinarily easy recommendation from me, especially at $20. It's a steal for this game. So I'd absolutely recommend it to people, or at
Yeah,
least if you're into RPGs like this, look at it, check it out, because it is worth your attention.
I talked about this game a few weeks ago on the show. I describe it as like 16 plus bit, right? Where
Ooh.
Right.
it's like a Super NES style game, but like the pixel art is just absolutely insane. It just looks gorgeous. I've been watching this one for a long time and been waiting for it to come out on the Switch specifically so I can play it there. So I'm pretty stoked to get my little hooks in it.
Yeah, I'm
Cool.
looking at this right now, and
These ones.
this I'm getting my hooks sharpened up.
Yeah,
'Cause,
and it's everything
yeah,
too. The story is cool. The
Everyone
art,
get your hooks ready.
the
Yeah.
music is great, the combat is great. Like, it's just a cool game. It's a very,
Mhm.
very good game.
For
That's
those of
cool.
you who are listening, Seth's eyes like face lit up when Tom was describing this game.
yeah. And then I looked at the pictures and stuff, and I was like, "This is my game." Like
Seth, let's see those
specifically,
hooks.
see, the hooks are out, baby. Doing one of
They got
these,
'em
get
ready.
some sparks, sharpen them up, get that
I like it. I like
edge,
it. I like it.
sinking
You
them.
got to come watch the video to see these hooks that they're pulling out just for this
Yeah.
game.
For people at home, we're curling our fingers to simulate hooks.
They're
For people
pretending
at
to be
Oh,
velociraptors.
right. Clever girl.
Also coming out this week is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2. We briefly mentioned this previously. Zach is stoked. Are you going to play this?
Hell yeah. Are you kidding? The first Bloodstained was so good. So Ritual of the Night is the big boy version of Bloodstained, the Igarashi led one, but I believe the first one was called Curse of the Moon.
Yes.
Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, and that is an 8-bit NES style, 8-bit plus, like in the same way that we were talking about CrossCode, where it is like a NES style Castlevania game. You can switch between 4 characters. This game has new characters to play as, but man, that first game as a precursor to Ritual of the Night was like one of my favorite games of 2018.
Oh,
And
such a
then
delight.
Ritual of the Night was on nearly the top of my list last year. So these games are right up my alley. And this game is this also Inti Creates? I believe it is.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sweet. Those guys are great.
Yeah, they do
Yeah.
great stuff.
And this one is out on the 10th, and it's only $15. So if you like Metroidvanias or Castlevania-ish likes,
Castlordias.
Yeah, it's more NES Castlevania than I feel like it's like Metroidvania. But the
Yeah.
cool thing about the last one, about Circle of the Moon, or I'm sorry, Curse of the Moon, was you had to switch characters to get through different environments and stuff. Like some characters had different abilities, so you had to switch on the fly between these characters. But then they all shared sort of one cohesive health bar. So like all 4 characters had to die before you got a game over. So such a cool game. Can't wait for this next one.
that's a really cool, I don't know, like, I don't want to call it a gimmick, just what are you?
A gameplay mechanic.
Gameplay mechanic. There you go. Thanks, Seth. I don't know
Get
what's
the
wrong
hooks
with my
out.
brain today, but it's
Get
fine. I'm ready.
So,
Also
hey,
coming out.
new T-shirt design.
This is gonna be
NVC
our
hooked
new
out.
thing. Get the- no. Also coming out this week is Deadly Premonition 2, A Blessing in Disguise, out on the 10th for $50. It is a sequel to the cult classic detective game, but I have some news. Our reviewer, Tristan, I've never said his
Ogilvy,
name out.
Tristan
Ogilvy.
Ogilvy.
Thanks. I think you helped me out with that one last time too. Ogilvy. Someday I will remember how to pronounce your last name. I'm so sorry, Tristan. But he gave it a 5 out of 10.
Oof.
And this is what he has to say. Deadly Premonition 2 isn't good, nor is it so bad that it's good like its predecessor. It's something much, much worse. It's mediocre. And that's too bad. I'm certainly grateful for the chance to spend some more time with the eccentric and ever enthusiastic Francis York Morgan, because he remains one of the funniest and most unique lead characters in all of gaming. But I found myself less tolerant of Deadly Premonitions 2's technical issues and half-baked combat this time around, and its central mystery is ridiculous without ever going far enough off the rails to be truly surprising or memorable. Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to play this game. The first one is a cult classic, but I did look at Tristan's review, and man, that frame rate is
Oof.
something else, man. Especially for a 2020 game, it doesn't look great. And like, granted, I think IGN gave the original a 2 or a 3, and that game is still one of the most beloved, one of the most beloved cult games I think of all time. So this one still has the potential to do that, but like as a nuts and bolts game, it's a bummer to hear that it's only a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I saw Jim Sterling actually put it really
Uh-oh.
well Huh?
There we go.
What?
I'm okay.
Oh, no, no,
Say
no.
every-
I saw Jim Sterling put it really well, where he basically was saying, like, there are things about the way Swery makes games that are like very intentionally janky, right?
Mhm.
Like that is his intentional design style in a lot of cases. But stuff like frame rate is like just wrong. Like that's not part of that, right? Like you can appreciate parts of Deadly Premonition that are like stupid or like jank as like this sort of hokey thing, and that's fine, that's great. But like if the game doesn't run well, that's not really like a style, that's just sort of a failing of the performance of the game, right?
Yeah. So disappointment. I'm sure we'll talk about it more once more of us have played it. Because even though it's got bad reviews, I assume some of us might still check it out. We'll see. I was hoping maybe Brian would check it out, but we'll get back to it.
I'm sure Brian is playing it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm positive.
so we just talked about games out this week, including Superliminal, Catherine Full Body, CrossCode, and Deadly Premonition 2: A Blessing in Disguise. Now, I want to move on, but do any of you have a game you're playing that you really want to talk about?
I'd like to talk about Paper Mario, the Origami. No,
Oh
I
my
already covered
gosh.
that.
Okay. Cool. So then let's move on to Question Block, where we answer our audience members' questions. And this first question is from Sonny Vaughn, or Sunny Vaughn, one of those two. And he says, at what age do you think it's appropriate to introduce kids to proper video games, not just tablet teddy bear games? And which games would you start with? I'm thinking Super Mario Bros. Yes, the first one, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with all the assists on for my 2-year-old daughter.
2-year-old's probably a little too young, not because I think it's going to like rot her precious little brain or anything, but I think like she just won't really comprehend it, and it might not be fun or and it might end up being frustrating. I would say maybe 3 or 4. When my oldest son, who is 16 now, uh, when he was 4, we
Old enough to
played.
drive a Mario Kart.
He's old enough to drive a Mario Kart, but he's not old enough to throw a banana peel. It's
No.
weird laws that we have.
That's right. Can't throw a banana peel till you're 21, kids.
That's exactly correct. You can go to the service, fight for your country, but you can't throw banana peels. What was I saying? Oh yeah, when he was 4, he and I played Lego Star Wars 2 together, and I think that was like the perfect game because it was a co-op game, and he was more interested in just making R2 fall off cliffs and scream because he go every time over and over again, and he just like had the most fun with that. So I would say Super Mario Brothers also, or any of those classic games, are great for kids to play because they were so simple for the most part that anybody can pick them up and play them. And then, bonus, your little sweet daughter will grow up with an amazing appreciation of classic gaming, like I've instilled in my children. I guess Mario Kart with all the assists on for a 2-year-old will be fine because then it just basically plays itself. But
You know,
yeah,
some of my earliest memories, I must have been 2 or 3. It was sitting on the floor in a living room with my dad and watching either Gilligan's Island or playing Super Mario World on the Super
nice.
Nintendo. And that was my first game, and I still remember it. It's kind of blurry. I mean, I was super young. But I completely agree, Seth. I think Mario games are a perfect introduction, or any sort of platformers, because I mean, you go right and you jump over things. The mechanics are simple enough for even 2 and 3-year-olds to kind of get the hang of, as long as they play it a couple times with you by their side to help guide them.
Yeah, I the very first video game that I remember playing seriously was Super Mario Brothers 3. And I was probably 5 or 6 by the time I was playing that. And those games do a really nice job of introducing like simple mechanics at first and then gradually building on the stuff that you understand. Now, I don't have any children myself, but when I do, my plan is to start with the classics. So I'll be having them play Dark Souls Remastered on the Nintendo Switch. Just get them right in there and teach them what's what.
Perfect. Great advice. Tom, did you want to expand on games great for kids?
No, I feel like a baby. I don't want to really talk about what I think babies should play. That is
Tom's out here talking babies having babies, man. Watch out.
Oh man. So this next question is from Evan Beeduff, and they ask, which genre is lacking the most on the Switch?
Hmm.
That's a great question,
Great
because there are some that are like just lacking on consoles in general, like RTS games, right? Like that's coming up a little bit more on the Switch now, but like for me it would probably just be like more first person stuff. Like I don't necessarily know what like specifically a genre in that, because there are good shooters, right? Like there's
Wolfenstein, Doom, Overwatch.
yeah, there are good
Yeah.
shooters in first person there. It's just like I don't think of a lot of like I don't know. I think like bigger first person adventure games I think are maybe missing to a certain extent, but maybe I'm just not thinking about them right now.
You know what would be a great first person adventure game? Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, that's
Or the
the genre
Metroid Prime
that's
trilogy.
missing, is Metroid Prime games.
Metroid Prime.
That's the genre.
Yeah.
Someday.
I think that this is not maybe my favorite genre, but if I could speak for our friend Per Schneider, racing games. I feel like we have a pretty general lack of racing games. There are a few interesting sims and a few interesting kart racers, but for the most part, I think like racing games are sorely missing on the Switch. Oh, we did just get Burnout Paradise. It is subject to the Switch tax at the moment, but hopefully that'll come down eventually because that's a really great arcade racer. But yeah, I feel like there could be more, like hardcore racing games on the Switch.
Until we get analog triggers, man, there's not really.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It's a tough genre to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not a lot of fighting games on the Nintendo Switch.
I mean, what do you need more fighting games for when you have Smash?
I'm
kidding, I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm not. I always wanted to be a fighting game guy, but I'm so bad at them, so I'm not really advocating very well for it. But
and there are exceptions to all those, right? Like Zach brought up a bunch of shooters. There is Mario Kart or Mortal Kombat 11, but like,
well, there's also the Street Fighter collection on Switch, which is a phenomenal,
very
value.
good,
and really, really good. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you guys all spoke my mind as well. So we'll leave it at that. It needs more racing games and some more fighting games. But as Tom mentioned, kind of need analog triggers for the racing games. So we'll wait and see for that. Maybe we'll get a new controller.
Joy-Con 2.
Probably not. Joy-Con 2. Pro Controller 2.
No drift.
Didn't we already have a Pro Controller for the Wii U though? Anyway, it's fine. Whatever. This next question is from David Opinko, and he asked, what's your favorite game on Switch that you feel is underrated? For me, it's Dragon Quest Builders 2. It's a great game that, even when it came out, I hardly heard anyone talking about. And I have to agree with him. Dragon Quest Builders 2 was actually really fun, and it got its hooks in me. So I guess that doesn't work. But I had a lot of fun with it when I had time to play it when it first came out, and I keep meaning to revisit it. What about you guys? What are some of your favorite games that you think are severely underrated?
So many. This question hurts my brain because so many things come out on Switch now that like there are so many good games that just kind of fall under the radar sometimes. So like I'll start with this. If you haven't played Return of the Obra Dinn yet, play Return of the Obra Dinn.
That's a good one.
That's what I was gonna say, Tom.
Sorry.
Damn, that's all right.
Yeah, that one jumps out to me as like, man, that game is good and flew under so many people's radar because of, I think, honestly, the way it looks. Like it is a hard game to sell and a hard game to look at, especially in screenshots when it's not moving. So like,
a hard game to look at.
It is. It's very like Sam Claiborne said that he had to stop playing Obra Dinn because it was giving him a headache. Like. Which I sympathize with, right? I'm not throwing shade at that. It's 1 bit. It's literally 1 bit. So yeah, but play Obra Dinn, man.
Okay, another Switch game that I feel like is underrated that we didn't talk about a ton. Well, Brian talked about it a little bit, but I feel like it's not been brought up a lot since. Is Minute? Minute is a very cool take on traditional Zelda game, where you only have a minute to play and you keep repeating the same things. It's a little bit roguelike, it's a little bit Zelda, like it's a very, very cool concept, and just kind of a really funny game once you get into the whole conceit of it. I like that game a lot.
I've already brought this up many times before, but Room Factory 4 Special is very good on the Switch. I know it was originally a 3DS game, but I just want to throw it out there again. Seth, what about you?
I think The Switch version of Cave Story is super, super good. It's basically the definitive version of Cave Story. And if you haven't played Cave Story, do yourself a favor, go grab it on Switch if you can find it, because it's a wonderful, delightful game and it has some incredible music. And you can
Um,
change the soundtracks around on the Switch version to whichever one you like the best.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Cave Story is such a good game.
it's such a good game.
Cave
That
Story
game's
is so
like
good.
extremely old now too,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's worth if
It,
you haven't picked it up yet.
I'd go so far as to call it a classic at this point. Like
Yeah,
honestly, like that. Yeah, that game is killer. I thought of another one as well. Nine Parchments. Did anybody play Nine Parchments?
Uh,
no.
I played a little bit
Tom,
a while back. Yeah.
yeah, I think you and I played a little bit at the office, but Nine Parchments is a
That's a
very cool
co-op
sort
game.
of. It's like a co-op Diablo kind of game where
Yeah.
you're in an isometric.
Oh,
I think it's the team behind Torchlight. Tom, do you
oh,
remember if
okay.
that's true?
It's some connection there. It's a
Yeah,
similar-ish game. I don't remember exactly though.
it's an isometric kind of hack and slash, but you can do really cool stuff like one person can shoot lightning beams and the other person can reflect it onto enemies. Like you do like a lot of team ups and stuff. It's a really cool sort of dungeon crawler, like a Diablo, but with a twist. Really fun to play in co-op.
Cool.
Mhm.
Thank you for the question, David. And our last question for this week is from James Gold. And they ask, last week, Brian mentioned long games as being a barrier to replayability. I'm in the same boat. Hollow Knight is one of my favorite games of recent years, but I haven't gone back to it as much as the Metroid franchise due to length. What are your favorite games around 12 hours or less to revisit? And before we start this question, Tom, how long is Hollow Knight?
The first time it took me to beat it took me 30 hours, and then I spent another 6 hours hitting 100%. And since then, they've added 4 or 5 DLCs that I think have extended the length of the game by at least 10.
Oh my goodness.
So if you want 100% that game, it's probably about 40 to 50 hours. If you wanted to just beat it like just playing it, not worrying about like getting to the one of the not true endings, if you want to get technical about it, is probably like 15, maybe. Um, so it can be, but then you're missing so much of the meat of the game. But yeah, it's a long game. All in, it's a long game.
Um, I don't want to derail the conversation, but
Go
I'm
for it.
gonna because I just saw a Wall Street Journal headline that says that Japanese theme parks have banned screaming on roller coasters because it spreads the coronavirus, and have asked their participants to please scream inside your heart.
It's 2020. Screaming inside your heart.
Scream inside your heart.
I'll
12
make sure
hour
to do
games.
that.
Right?
I would throw my hat in. One of the games I like replaying that's doesn't take long to like technically beat is Celeste. Um, Man, I love that game. It's got a lot of built-in things of timing yourself and the golden strawberries that show up if you beat all the B-sides too. It's like there's a lot to do in that game, but
What are,
it's one of those ones that you can really lightly just dip back into and just like play the chapters that you like.
Tom, you reviewed that game. What score did you give that game?
I don't remember actually. It was a while
Uh,
ago.
okay, that's fair.
I gave it a 10.
He gave it a 10. That's a very good game. Celeste is a very good recommendation.
I
Um,
go for it, Zach.
Brian said it last week, but he mentioned Resident Evil 4. But I think
Oh,
there's a
that's a
lot
great
of
one.
Resident Evil games on the Switch that are about that same length, that are totally worthwhile. And specifically the original Resident Evil, I feel like you can blow through in about the same amount of time, and maybe even shorter than that. And
Yeah, if you
those
beat it
are
in 3 hours, you get to replay it with the missile launcher with infinite
that's right.
ammo.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably something that those games I go back to like pretty frequently. So
What
Yeah,
about
I
you,
would
Seth?
say all of the like all the classic NES games. Like I play Mega Man 2 through like at least once a year. I go through DuckTales like once a year because DuckTales is also one of my favorite games. You could play the original Legend of Zelda in under 12 hours. Like you could just sit down and just make a day of it. I mean, why not? What are you gonna do? Otherwise, you're not going to the beach. Go play the Legend of Zelda, the original one. It's on Nintendo Switch Online anyway. It's $20 a
that's
year.
true.
Yeah, the
I
classics.
I am drawing a blank on favorite games that are not long as heck. Like a lot of my favorite games are just really beefy, and I guess I really liked the complete first season of The Walking Dead by Telltale. I think
Mm,
that is right around 12 hours, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the Telltale, if you play an entire season, And also, Life is Strange was also kind of on the short end, but these are all story based games. So I don't know how often you would want to go back and replay them because the whole drawing point to them is the story. So unless it's been
Good
many
point.
years, I don't know if you'd want to go back and replay it again, even though there are choices that you can make. But I don't know. I usually don't go back and replay story games. I just kind of like look up what I missed out on online. So
Honestly, I don't replay a lot of games. Probably
No.
the game I've replayed the most in recent years, weirdly, is Sayonara Wild Hearts, because that game is like 2 hours long and just is an absolute jam. So it's just like really fun to
God, that
replay
soundtrack
that
is
one.
so good.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. As a kid, I replayed games all the time because as a kid, I couldn't buy my own games, so I kind of was stuck with the
Right.
handful that I had. So if I got bored, I'd restart a game. Like I remember, I started a new game in like Pokemon Red or Blue just to for fun, and then I didn't think about it and saved, and I was just like, oh well, I just saved over my save.
Oh,
That's fine. I guess I'll just do this again. But as a kid, it was like I had the time, so
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I used to do that with a lot of like Square RPGs on the PlayStation 1 where I just play them like over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So when you restart your save, it's fine. But if someone else erases your save,
it's a
heckin'
bummer.
it's a
Yeah.
super big bummer. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But that is about all the time we have left for Nintendo Voice Chat. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. And remember, you can catch NVC every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific time on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember, Nintendo Voice Chat is the only place you can
Scream inside your heart.
Can't get the thing.